It's like, if you want to go to treatment, you go today. If you get caught doing drugs on the street, you don't get arrested, but you get a ticket to come to a dissuasion committee to try and say, like, what is going on in your life that you're trying to commit suicide?
Welcome back, folks. We're at episode 6 of the Deep Fire podcast. I'm your host, Joe Fries. Very pleased to be joined today by Jerome Abraham, former executive director of Discovery House. Welcome.
Hey, Joe. Thanks.
I've wanted to have you on for a long time. I asked him on today to talk about the issue of safe supply. Help us get an understanding of what it's all about and some of the issues. Jerome's personal story of redemption is nothing short of awe-inspiring. It's familiar to some people in Penticton, but I'm going to let him share it, of course. But it starts with him being dropped off at Discovery House as a client with everything he owned in a garbage bag, and it ends with him leaving there as the executive director. So he's uniquely positioned to talk about some of these issues around drug policy. So with that, I'll let you take it away, Jerome. In a small nutshell, that story about how you came to arrive at Discovery House as a client and become executive director. Can you just walk us through it?
Well, I like to say that I checked in the back door as a client, and I liked it so much I bought the company, but it's just a joke because they are actually a nonprofit organization. How I ended up at Discovery House was from 17 years of using and selling drugs and failing miserably and losing my second home due to that. And pretty much this time all my family and any kind of friends or associates other than my Narcotics Anonymous sponsor, who was volunteering at Discovery House. And he was even finished talking to me early. He just said, the only thing I'll do is give you a ride down to Discovery House when you're ready. And I was calling in for about 6 weeks, and then got dropped off. It was actually I actually had 2 garbage bags, so it was pretty high rolling. One orange and one black, so not even matching Glad luggage. And it was April, so I couldn't pretend it was just for Halloween. But yeah, coming from, owning a house, having a well-paying, probably a $70,000 a year job in the travel industry to right down to the streets to nothing. And that was probably the 4th or 5th time that I rebuilt my life and then crashed again. So checked in as a fairly, let's say unwilling, but very skeptical client that anything was going to work. And they sort of allowed me to say, I think this is stupid, but try it anyways. And they gave me a lot of space, and it was exactly what I need, because they gave me space, but they didn't let me rip myself off. They didn't let me out of accountability for things. They didn't let me give excuses of why I couldn't, right? And they just gave me the space and showed me, this is a program that's worked for a lot of guys. And if you give it a shot, we think it'll work for you too. And lo and behold, it did. I was there as a client for a year. One of the big things about Discovery House is giving back and becoming part of a community. And, I just started volunteering one night a week as a client monitor. I actually worked there as the night monitor. And then I was there for doing meditation groups, volunteering, and then helping the manager. And then he was let go, and they sort of asked me to stand in until they found someone else. And after a couple of months, they said, we think you should send us a resume, and we probably won't look for anybody else. And I got to use a lot of my past skills from jobs. I had a lot of sales and marketing jobs, and public speaking and event planning and management. And so it was exciting to be able to use a lot of that when I was executive director. And then it was also great to just get a lot of training in the clinical side of treating addiction, as well as use some of my own lived experience to help some guys. So, I feel like the biggest beneficiary ever. I worked there for 12 and a quarter years, and They recently were kind enough to let me go with a nice severance package in December 2021, I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer, which unfortunately it spread to my bones, but it was fairly stable. After my first round of radiation last September, I started feeling some discomfort in my spine, tailbone area, and that sort of progressed. And then once I finally got a scan in January, they said there were some metastases that were moving in the spine quite aggressively. So it was becoming harder and harder to, stay focused on my job and my family, take care of myself, and, run an operation that had grown from 5-bedroom leased house to 4 houses and 1 on the go and 25 guys in-house and about 150 alumni that we regularly care for there. So,
okay. So you're taking a bit of a break to look after yourself. Well-deserved break, I would say. Now, to go back, your drug of choice was heroin, and you were kicking around the streets of Kelowna at the time you went into Discovery House, correct?
Yeah. It had become heroin and smoking crack as well. Pretty much whatever, but the opiate addiction was with me from probably the time I was 18 until 35. And there's numerous times of being off it. I was on the methadone program for 14 years, and I was able to come off that while I was at Discovery House. So. A lot of freedom gained there.
Discovery House is abstinence-based. It's a 12-step based program, and it's abstinence-based. What does that mean?
Well, it means there's absolutely no drug or alcohol use there. It means that you're shown how to live. I think one of the big parts of the program there is you learn how to advocate for yourself. You learn how to your place in a society and a community. And I think a lot of people that are using, even people that are functionally using, and there's a lot, probably more than even the people we see that are street entrenched, they're really alone, right? They don't have this place of belonging within a family, within the community. And that's one thing that Discovery Host does a lot of, community events, embedding the clients within the community, and then, teaching us to give back what was so freely given to us. And, it is, I don't know, there's some magic there sure, in that place.
Are there other treatment models, though, where clients can still use substances and taper off? And I guess what I'm getting at is the safe supply. How does safe supply fit into recovery model? You yourself said you were on methadone for 14 years, so maybe it worked for you, but how does safe supply factor into all this?
Well, safe supply, I think, is, to me, it's different than opioid replacement therapy, or especially how the model is being set up. When this province was initially talking about safe supply, and they were talking about the 4 pillars approach, which we've seen work in other jurisdictions. Before Vancouver, and Lausanne, Switzerland had the highest rate of HIV drug users in the world, and then they developed the 4 pillars approach, which included prevention, abstinence-based treatment, replacement therapies, and enforcement.
Right.
And so I think what's happened here is, there was a big pushback from a lot of people that didn't understand that. And so they slowly, somehow, the province started talking about harm reduction and not including things like enforcement, not including abstinence-based recovery, and only touting getting people on Suboxone and methadone as a full treatment. And that's what was happening in and around 2011, 2012.
Yeah. Suboxone and methadone, those are the as I understand, they don't get you high, but they deal with the craving, the physical cravings and the urges that opioid addiction produces, but you're not getting high off them. Correct. Or if I got that right?
Yeah, I mean, you can Suboxone. I think you can't really you don't really get high. It the both of those opioid agonists fill in the receptor sites where um, the opioid molecules would attach in the brain. Like
Right.
our own body brain has opioid receptors in the
Yep.
brain, and you bump your elbow and your body creates its own natural painkiller. It fits into that opioid
Okay.
receptor site. Um, Opiate drugs have that same fit
Right.
into there, and so what happens when you've been using opiates for a long time is your body's natural painkillers, they go, well, we don't have to produce that anymore because it's happening synthetically. So you stop producing your dopamine, your feel-good chemicals, and so when that's taken away, then there's a heavy physical
Right.
withdrawal and a psychological withdrawal. And so those opiate agonist therapies were developed because they're longer acting,
Yep.
and they fill in those receptor sites. And Suboxone, I think, does a better job. You can, in my experience, get high from methadone.
Right.
You can take enough of it, but usually you'll be dopey and sleeping. But I was using quite a bit of heroin on top of methadone and smoking crack, and
Okay.
like for a while, right?
Okay.
And but I will say that the methadone program got me to a place where at least I was um, functional
Yeah.
enough that I could start to look at recovery. But the thing is, I had people that were um, willing to allow me to face the consequences of
Yeah.
my negative behaviors,
Yep.
and I think that's being removed. And um, we're in this sort of politically correct, I don't know, uh, where it's actually hurting people and killing people, and
Yeah.
the province and a lot of the health authorities are saying, oh well, the abstinence-based recovery, it's not evidence-based. And
Yes.
if we actually look at the evidence of what is and what is not working, you can look at, there's been billions of dollars spent since 2014 and 2016, really, when they
Mm-hmm.
declared the opioid crisis. There was 3.5 people a day passing away in British Columbia from fatal overdoses. Now we're looking at 7 to 8 people a day, and it's just increased. There's huge, there's way bigger tent cities in
Yeah.
lots of towns. Like it used to just be the kind of the downtown east side,
Mm-hmm.
Victoria. Now it's, Nanaimo, Kelowna, smaller places, Penticton, Prince George.
Yeah.
Like everywhere has about the same per capita, overdose rate
Yeah.
in British Columbia. And so it's like, are these, just putting some people into housing and not really helping them advocate for themselves? We're sort of giving them the message that, like, that's all, like, we'll give you a free place to live and we'll give you all the drugs you want, but that you're never going to make it past this in life is
Yeah.
kind of the message that
Yeah.
that's people are being sent. And
Okay.
and I'm talking as if I was one of, like, in that situation, like it would seem a little bit hopeless.
So we talked about opioid agonist therapies and methadone. There's another class where it's safe supply, and we hear about these being sold in the downtown east side. Dillies or Dilaudid, which is hydromorphone, which is a painkiller. The point of safe supply is to keep people using clean drugs rather than dirty fentanyl and street drugs, keep them alive to
Right.
get them in the treatment. But there's fears those pills are being diverted. So have I got that in a nutshell, what safe supply is all about? The intended purpose.
Well, the intended purpose, and that is currently what safe supply is about, because it's just sort of like, okay, well, if we give people drugs, they'll manage it on their own, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't do that with anything else. Like, you don't do it with alcohol or whatever. And there is, I just watched a documentary with some pharmacists from the downtown east side,
Yep.
and there's all sorts of diversion going on. They said you can literally see people lined up as soon as the pharmacy opens, asking people for their Dilaudid prescriptions. And they said, we see people selling them, and we contact the doctors, and once in a while the doctor will cut them off or cut them down. But most doctors are just like, well, we don't care, it's safe supply. And the people that are using fentanyl, the fentanyl is so strong that that is what they're going to seek. So, you know, I would think like that there is a lot of diversion going on from what I've heard, you know, years ago when I was using, you know, to get dilaudid eights, which they're giving out as safe supply. You know, those were $10, $8 was like a good deal. And, you know, 15 if you were really sick and somebody was trying to hold out and make money off you. And now I hear they're selling for like $1 a piece down at the coast, right? Because they're just flooded with them, or down in downtown east side. And so, you know, there was also on the documentary some school-aged kids that were saying, you know, those are becoming the recreational kind of party drug for you know, 14 and 15-year-olds there. And so all of that's creating is the next generation of fentanyl users because they're going to want something stronger, right? And the people that are really entrenched, you know, when I was using, you know, I got out just when fentanyl was just coming in, and I'm glad that I did, because I was the kind of user that it's like, okay, that guy died, that's got to be the good stuff, like that's what I want to use, right? Because most people they're not using for a good time, they're not using, you know, at that stage where they're using every day, they're just slowly committing suicide, right? Is what they're doing. And you know, I think we can do better at offering support. Like, why are we not pouring the, you know, even $500 million, right, into offering immediate treatment and immediate detox? And that's been just sort of like left by the wayside. And we look a province over in Alberta, you know, they heavily invested in treatment and recovery and stop screwing around with trying to, you know, give people housing with no strings attached and food and drugs. And, you know, I don't know anybody that's entrenched in using that's going to stop in those conditions. And, you know, within, like, Alberta was right beneath BC per capita in drug overdose deaths. I think they were third in the country next to BC. It was the highest. And then Ontario. And within 4 years, you know, they've cut down their overdose rates almost in half. And, you know, so there is evidence, but it's like, what do we choose to call evidence or see, right? Or what do we choose to believe in? And, you know, if I'm a free citizen, so I can say this stuff now, but I don't know how many subcommittees that I tried to sit on with Interior Health, like, where, you know, we got to go through 6 meetings that are an hour and a half long and figure out what terms we're allowed to use because we're hurting people's feelings, and people like sending me letters and saying, like, you can't say you're clean because you're stigmatizing people that aren't. And it's like, it's my own personal recovery, and if I want to call myself clean, I'll call myself clean. I never have I said, oh, that person's dirty for using. That person's suffering and they're hurting, and this, like, I guess, well-meaning political correctness from people that aren't actually have experience with it, or who are making $85 an hour to run more meetings at Interior Health. Like, if that's your job, you're going to run more meetings. Like, you're not. I find a lot of these things, they're not set out to, you know, have a brainstorming session and then decide, like, what's the next best step. It's just like, how can I get more ammo for this so that I can stay in my $200,000 a year job, right?
What's your prescription to fix this mess?
Treatment and detox beds. First off.
What kind of numbers are you talking about?
A couple thousand.
For the province.
You know, you have them in a few major centers and rural communities, but you can do that fairly easily. And I think, you know, maybe for $500 million or even $100 million, they could do a lot. The other thing is to stop stop allowing the socially toxic behaviors that go along with drug use. Like, drug use inherently is not bad, but then when you get the other criminal behaviors that are going along with it, and now we're kind of like, as a society, going, well, that's fine because they're a drug user. We don't do that with alcohol. We don't say, oh, well, you can go out and cause havoc in your car because you're drinking. No, we educate people, like, get a designated driver, right? And I think also having places like, if you're going to have safe supply, there's nothing wrong with that. But not just going, here, take these drugs out on the street, and like, there's no monitoring, there's no anything. Have specialized zones, just like you have a pub or a nightclub or whatever. You're allowed to use here. If you want to use and you want to get the safe supply, you got to come here and be monitored to do it, right? And we'll give you all the safe supply you want. But also use that as an engagement tool. It's not, like, that was the thing, the safe supply, the handing out of needles. It was, yes, to stop the overdoses, but it was also to start engaging people, to move them along the harm reduction continuum, to start removing the harms, not parking them at a manageable level of harm and then calling it harm reduction.
We were talking off camera and used that term harm maintenance. Which I think,
I think that's kind of what's going on, right? It's like, we'll give you a place to live. There's no programming. There's no whatever. Just try not to burn the place down, and we'll naloxone you until and give you food and a place to live until we can't naloxone you anymore. And it doesn't say to the person that's entrenched in drug use, there's a bunch of hope and we really want to support you to get better. Because the thing is, I'd say 99.9% of the people that are using, unless they're really early on in their using, they don't want to be using. And I bet you like 99% of them have said, today is the day I want to get treatment, but there's a 2-month waiting list and anything can happen in 2 months. If I had to wait 3 days, I could be out there for another 3 years. So we need to have immediately available detox and treatment. That's what they did in Portugal. That's what they did in Alberta. That's what they did in Switzerland. And it's like, if you want to go to treatment, you go today. If you get caught doing drugs on the street, you don't get arrested, but you get a ticket to come to a dissuasion committee to try and say, like, what is going on in your life that you're trying to commit suicide? Okay, you need housing, you need mental health support. That's another huge one that's missing. In the early 2000s, it's not just the government now. They shut down all the medium mental health and low.
The former BC Liberals.
Yes. Whatever,
Riverview.
The soccer team that they're calling BC United.
BC United.
They shut down, across the province, all this sort of medium mental health, and then put people out on the street, and then people started self-medicating, and then this is bubbling up, 20 years later. It's not a surprise to anybody in the industry. It's not a surprise, that 50 years of neglect is now bubbling up and it's basically overrunning some of our cities. Right?
The time you've been on this earth, you've changed a lot of lives, and we hope you stick with us a bit longer to change some more. So thank you for being here.
Thanks, Joe.